am Kelsey Chad. I was really interested in this discussion this week in terms of dislocating students, um, repositioning, all of this kind of stuff that honestly, as a teacher, there are going to be instances a lot where you do have to do some of these things, but I think that in all honesty, I want to be a teacher who truly tries my best to figure out why that behavior is happening and how to address the situation where I don't have to relocate the student or take them away from learning what the rest of the class is learning. I think that um, takes away from their learning even more than trying to figure out and help the behavior as it's happening. Um, I think I learned a lot, and you'll see a lot from what I reference in the articles about just in these articles that I read about discrimination on students, and I don't even know so much about whether it's intended to be that way, but it comes off that way. And for me, I work at a school, or I'm doing student teaching for both semesters in a school that is 61% free or reduced lunch. We see a lot of diverse backgrounds, and personally, in my teaching philosophy, that is something that I want to be at. I want to be at a school that is challenging in its own regard, just a family lifestyle and socioeconomics. And we have a lot of kids in our class that truly have behavioral issues that stem from something that's happening at home. And for me, when I first read the article about Michael and how he gets, with the title, he gets into trouble just by walking. I mean, what teacher wouldn't make that sad of a kid who thinks that he gets in trouble just by walking? And I know there's a quote in there that says, if people understood it, they wouldn't make fun of each other for learning disabilities. Everyone has something wrong with them. And he talked about it in the article that if it's not a learning disability, then it could be something in their appearance or something else. And I think that is just such a strong thing in this, and about how this student wanted to get out of this SPED program that he was in, and he was showing that he was capable and that he was smart, and they would not let him. And a lot of times you hear in SPED programs that once you're in an IEP or in a situation like that, that you cannot get out. But this kid had to feel so defeated in terms of this. I mean, they talked about different practices. The kid said that he learned better when the teacher introduced it to him and when he gave him formative assessments and really took the time to instruct the kid. And clearly in the article, it talks about how the student was frustrated and he wanted to get out of SPED, and he worked hard and he wasn't allowed. And it talks about how an IEP diploma is different than a regular diploma. And the next one that I'm going to reference was separating bad kids from good kids. And it talks about the discipline gap and the normalcy of failure for African American students removed from spaces of learning and places into spaces of punishment, and how big the gap was between African American students that were being placed into these separations as students of white descent that were not. And in that regard, I think as I said earlier, there are going to be times where you have to send a student elsewhere. But I think when you're looking at this and it's saying that African American students are constantly being dislocated or relocated, then there's something wrong with that situation, that a student is noticing it. And even in the article, Ray kept talking about how the teacher knows that this is happening. And for me, I never want to be a teacher where the students know that I'm picking up on specific students. Like, that makes me really sad to think that does happen, and you know that it does. But as a teacher, I want to have an inclusive classroom where the student isn't being taken away from the learning and um, it states, is it a failing system or a failing student? And I think in this regard, it truly is a failing system. It's not the student. I think when you're told over and over again that you're not going to succeed, the student begins to learn that they're not going to succeed. And lastly, the article that I was talking about was the diverse positioning in a fifth grade writing lesson and the making of a bad, bad boy. And things that stood out to me was that they were examining the classroom language interaction in terms of the positioning, something that is very important. And I think that it was strange for me to see that the interruptions and how they handled it. I think the kid just didn't know what was happening in the situation, and I think in that situation the kid didn't know why he was being relocated. And I think in those situations as a teacher, you have to always tell a student why this is happening. I think for me, I'm always like, you're not in trouble. I need the class to be not distracted. In that situation, maybe you're being a distracting student, and so you're moving to the safe seat or you're moving to a different place in the room. But I think just for a student to be relocated because they weren't following along with what the teacher was doing, which I think they do need to follow along, but I think also the teacher needs to tell the student, hey, I really need you to listen. You're being distracting right now. And I don't know. I think all of these things really, again, I don't want to be a teacher that takes students away from learning. I think if a behavior is constantly happening and it's constantly disrupting the class, then that's a behavior that needs to be addressed and sent somewhere else. But I think in terms of all of this, I really think that students need to learn in the classroom, and it doesn't need to be discriminated against, and they need to be okay to fail. They need to be taught that it's okay to not know everything, but it shouldn't be something that's gender-based or race-based or SES-based. It needs to be inclusive of everyone. It shouldn't be singling out a single student.